Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast, sponsored by the Society of Photographers. I'm your host, Joe Lenton, and this is episode 19. Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. Today we have a guest who's all the way from Australia. She was the 2022 Society of Photographers Overall Photographer of the Year. She's won numerous categories and been a finalist in numerous categories numerous times. And she is a very well-known pet photographer. This is the highly talented Belinda Richards. Hello, Belinda.
Hi, Joe. How are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. It's great for you to be on the podcast. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for thinking of me. It's quite happy to be here. Thank you.
That's great. So, with pets, I think, we've got to start with the obvious silly question. Which is best, cats or dogs?
Oh, that's the age-old question, isn't it? I'm actually a big fan of both. If I had to choose, you'd probably push me in the dog direction just because they can come with you everywhere. But I do love my cats as well. So
yeah, I've seen some people will take their cat for a walk, but I've said to my wife, I draw the line there.
Oh, look, it'd be great if most cats would do it, but unfortunately, most cats prefer to stay in their own environment and get a bit scared of the big wide world. So, it's a lot easier to take your dog for a walk down the street or take him to the cafe for a coffee. But yeah, most cats won't be up for that.
I'm not sure, but your studio's called Frog Dog. Does that mean you've got a frog that you take for a walk as well, or is it just the dogs?
No, I wish I did though. God, imagine how many Instagram followers I could get. So Frog Dog Studios comes from my previous dog. She's passed away nearly 2 years ago now, but her name was Smushy and she was a French bulldog. And she was a short little stocky little thing and she used to sit like a frog. So when I decided, when I was coming up for names for the business, that's what I landed on. So, and it's a bit different. I'm a bit branding focused with my business. So I feel like having that sort of unusual name has been really beneficial because people don't forget Frog Dog Studios. I imagine they would forget Belinda Richards photography.
Yeah, it's a little bit more memorable, isn't it? It sticks in the mind, so that's a good strategy. I was wondering initially whether that was kind of your specialism, frogs and dogs, or
No, I've never actually photographed a frog in the studio, so that's maybe I need to do that. I've never even, that here we are 8 years down the track, and I've never even thought about that.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
There's something to work towards.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a video at some point involving pictures of frogs and dogs. It's just going to have to be done.
Yeah, I think it will. I think you're right. Possibly separately. We don't want any dogs thinking that the frog's a tasty treat,
No, we don't have as many frogs in the garden anymore, unfortunately, because our cats like to chase them. So, yeah. They're handy to have, frogs, definitely. They're very useful. They get rid of other pests. But.
Yes, they do. And they're cute.
Have you always loved animals then, of all types? Is that something that has always been with you?
Yeah, yes and no. So it's funny. When I was a kid, I was extremely frightened of dogs. I had an uncle growing up who was very much into dogs, dog crazy, but he always had German Shepherds and Rottweilers, so quite large dogs. And every time we would see him, my mum would tell me to stay away from the dogs. And I think that instilled a fear in me. That as I got a bit older, I got to about 10 or 11, I think I was. And my auntie, my mum's family all lives in Northern Ireland. So that's quite a trip from, to see them. And I'd never actually, they finally came to visit us. And this was like 1990 or something like that. So it was quite a big deal. And while they were here, I begged my auntie to buy me a dog, thinking there's no way she's going to buy me a dog. Well, she bought me a dog. And that was where the love of, my animals kind of really started. I was always bringing home stray cats. Frogs I used to catch a lot, actually, because I grew up in the country. So we used to catch frogs and breed the tadpoles and all that sort of stuff. So I've just always been an animal person. Once I sort of got over that fear of dogs, I've been in love with them ever since, and I've been working with them now since 2001. So yeah, it's 23 years or something like that. I've been working with them, and they're just really special to me in my life. Yeah, I think that I will always work with them in some capacity or another.
They can have quite distinct personalities, can't they, really? I mean, people often just sort of think, oh, it's just a dog or it's just a cat, but they can be very, very different, can't they?
Oh, they can, absolutely. Like, I mean, I've had quite a few dogs now that have left us over the years, and obviously I keep bringing more into the family, and every single one of them has been different in one way or another. They have their very own personalities. The cats too. I've had 2 cats now, and they're both very, very different. And yeah, it's quite lovely having them around, and they're just sort of these magical creatures to me that just bring this happiness and warmth into a home. I don't have children by choice, and having my animals around, it's this little person that I don't, it's just a bit easier to look after too, to be quite honest.
They are, yeah. I think at times cats can be a bit like toddlers, but the handy thing being that you can leave them on their own and they'll look after themselves.
That's exactly right. And, nobody calls child services on you. So,
yeah, definitely. So did you find you needed any training to handle animals at all? Or did you naturally just bond with animals as you spent time with them?
So that first dog that we got as a kid became very attached. Both of us were attached to each other, but he was my dog. I was the only person who could take his food away. Things like that. He just became my responsibility, and I think ever since then, I think it's a natural thing that I have. Obviously, over the last 23 years or so, I've learnt an awful lot because I've worked. I initially started out working as a mobile dog groomer in 2001. Did that for about 7 years. I've worked in welfare here for many, many years. I worked at the Lost Dogs Home. I used to do their emergency services. So I've worked in a council role as an animal management officer. So I've worked in every capacity there. So from, having a lot of fun with them here in the studio, and it's all light and good times, to the really dark side of pet ownership and, having to deal with animals that are neglected or not being treated properly, or, even just picking them up after they've been hit by a car and stuff like that. So, you tend to develop these skills over time. And I mean, one of the things that I used to attend to a lot as they're like doing the emergency services stuff for council was going out to dog attacks and dogs that people couldn't control. They were on the loose and they were angry and things like that. So you tend to learn a lot about dog behaviour and psychology by immersing yourself in that world, I guess. And it's also for your own safety. So I always suggest that, whenever I'm sort of training new pet photographers or mentoring, to if you haven't had any interaction with animals other than the family pet, it's a really good idea to try and get some of that experience, whether it is going and doing a course or whether it's volunteering at your local shelter, or doing a much more in-depth training with your own pet to just learn more about the subjects that you're dealing with. Because I think that for me, that intuitive natural response with animals is why I get the images that I do
Mm-hmm.
with the clients that come into my studio. I think it's because I mean, first of all, I know how to behave around them to make them feel comfortable and welcome and at ease, which then allows the dog to then open up and give me the personality that the owner wants to see in their photos. So yeah, I think for me, like I said, it's a bit of a mixture of both. It's natural ability, but it's also years of being immersed in a world where I've kind of had to learn these things. So yeah, that was a long answer,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I can imagine that it seems to me you're almost at polar opposites of where you started with your animal welfare, because now you're seeing sort of hopefully well maintained, well looked after pets coming into your studio,
Yeah.
coming from a loving environment and that, whereas animal welfare, I mean, that tell us a little bit about, without telling too many horror stories, but tell us a little bit about what that was like, even working in that sort of environment.
So I was working here for the largest pound. I guess it wasn't really it's not a rescue as such. It's a pound shelter. It's basically where your dog goes if it gets picked up on the street. Here in Melbourne, in a lot of the like metropolitan Melbourne. So if your dog gets out, and council comes and gets it, that this is where it would end up. So it's not a rescue as such. And I know the main difference between that is that when you're working as a rescue, you are taking in animals that need to be rehomed consistently. They might have behavioural problems and that sort of thing, and they've usually come from the pound or the shelter. So if they haven't already, if they haven't been able to be rehomed at the pound or the shelter, then they'll go off to the smaller rescue groups to hopefully get more rehabilitation there. So it's sort of the first port of call, I guess, for animals that are being seized as well. I attended a lot of, house searches, I guess, where there's dogs there, because the police here in Australia are not trained to deal with animals. So they call us to come and do that. So then if the dog is seized because they're doing a drug raid or something like that, that sort of thing we used to attend to a lot. We would attend to dogs hit by cars or anything, like maybe on the train tracks or all sorts of different things. Man, I've even been called out to cows in people's front yards in metro areas and that sort of thing, because we have people who like to get calves and that for Easter time, and then they cook them up. So, which is not allowed here in in the city. So it's I have definitely seen some interesting stuff. I've seen some absolutely horrific things as well. But you're sort of seeing the best and the worst of humanity working in these environments. And I mean, people who do it long term, it affects you after a while. It's I mean, for me, it was a conscious decision to get out of welfare.
Right.
In the end, and that's when I decided to do my university degree. I did an arts degree. And I was actually walking away from the whole animal industry altogether. I didn't want to do it anymore. It was just exhausting. And after I did that, you do your university degree and then you've got to pay for it, right? So I had to go, and that's when I ended up working at the council. So doing their animal management. And I did that for a while and then decided, well, I don't actually really want to be away from animals. I just want to be away from the horror of some of the things that happen to animals. So that's when I decided, well, I'm going to take photos of dogs. And turns out I was really good at it.
Well, yeah, it makes sense, I think, trying to get away from some of the darker sides of things like that. And I can only imagine that, days of that is going to put an emotional strain on you, and try and do that for year after year is going to be difficult.
It is.
So, in a sense now you're enjoying the happier side of the relationships with the animals.
Oh, I certainly am. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a real joy, and I am so grateful for the life that me and my husband have created here with Frog Dog Studios. And
Hmm.
it's yeah, I mean, I just couldn't ask for anything better, to be honest. I'm so happy with the way things have turned out, even if it wasn't originally what I was going for. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the animal sort of grooming business that you did as well for a while. I mean, did that kind of then run into the photography a bit? Because you almost sort of imagine. I know with people sometimes they get themselves dolled up a bit, before they're going to have a shoot, and that
Yeah.
is that something that you've combined at all? That kind of
No.
bit of pampering and then a shoot?
Not
No.
really, no. So when
No.
I was grooming, so that was in the early
Mm.
2000s, pet photography really wasn't a thing at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was, people thought I was crazy driving around to people's homes and grooming the dogs, and thought I'd never make any money, but I certainly showed them. Um, but now that the reason why I gave up the grooming is because it's so physically demanding, and I actually have a degenerative disc disease in my back. So, and it's come from the years of grooming, and I basically had to stop doing that. So I sold the business. But what I do here now, where I am just a couple of doors down, because I'm in a main street, I have, there's a groomer who is very well known in Melbourne as well. And I try to send my clients to her first and then they come down for their photo shoot. So she primps and preens them, and then I capture them.
That sounds like a very good partnership, really. That,
It is, yeah. And it all came before she opened up the dog grooming business. It started out with her just bringing her dogs to me to be photographed first. So it's, it was meant to be.
Yeah, it looks like it. So the photography side of things, you went and got did some formal study, got some formal training. So what prompted you to actually go that route?
So when I first finished up high school, going to uni wasn't really an option for me. They didn't have the money. Doing an arts degree also wasn't really, get a real job. You're never going to make any money kind of doing that sort of thing. So I did. And then when I decided to decided to break away from the welfare industry, and I was I was like, well, if I'm going to go and do study, I want to study something to do with art. And I just started out doing a diploma in photography. And I started that when I was 30. So I did that for 2 years, completed that, and then got accepted to a fine art degree at RMIT here in Melbourne. And I did that for the next 3 years. So doing that has been, it's been an amazing experience. And I never actually thought how much impact that fine art degree would actually have on my creativity and how I think and see the world now. But I'm really glad that I did something like that. But it was a moment of, it really was, I tend to do these things in my life, just out of nowhere. I'll get this idea and it's got to be done. And that was what the photography was like. It literally came to me one night. This is what I want to do. I don't know what I want to photograph. But I want to make art and I want to use a camera doing it. So that's sort of where I started, and it just sort of evolved from there. That's been 13 years now. So
that was that then learning the technical aspects of photography and learning bits about lighting and post-production. Is that what your courses involved?
Yeah, so the initial course, the diploma, is all your technical stuff. I mean, when I first started doing this, I'd never even held an SLR camera. So it has helped me in informing the technical aspects of what I do, but also that all that darkroom stuff helped me with Photoshop, because Photoshop is the darkroom, right? And a lot of it is, if you understand what you're doing in the darkroom, you can bring that pretty much into Photoshop as well. So that was what I spent the first 2 years doing. And then once I sort of had a good like that's a 2-year technical course, I guess. And then I went and did a fine art degree, which was no technical and all arty-farty stuff, basically.
So did you follow particular artists then? Is that how you developed through your fine art degree? Do you get introduced to particular artists that you then...
Yeah, absolutely we do. So, and I think that was probably how I'm able to think outside of the box now, with photographing dogs and cats and animals all together. So rather than sort of just pointing my camera and taking a portrait, I try to tell a story with my work. And I think that doing that art degree and learning how to critique art and how to read art and follow different artists and see why they are choosing the choices that they choose when they're actually creating their works and things like that, and really understanding that sort of thing has really helped, I think, in helping me push my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been an interesting journey, actually. It's So it's actually a funny story. When I was in, I think, like my second or third year of uni, I can't remember exactly when, but my university lecturer showed us a whole bunch of David Edmondson's work. And we talked about, the Hopper-esqueness of his work and the lighting and, the storytelling and all that sort of thing behind it. And then when years later, I've come into this world and I have met David now. I've met him at WPPI quite a few years ago and was able to say to him how this is so weird and random because, a lot of the time in art history and things like that, you're studying people, they're gone. They've already passed on. And then, I was at WPPI and I was like, oh my God, that's that guy. And being able to go up to somebody and speak to them, and then it was a really surreal experience. So
I bet, yeah.
And he happened to judge one of my images that WPPI and gave it 100. So I was like, whoa, this is pretty good.
You decided you liked him from then on, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was it was a great experience, that's for sure. But from uni to real life was really nice.
So was it just photographers that you studied, or did you study other art forms as well with the fine art?
I only created using photography. I did do a little bit of printmaking and things like that, but it's just it was more just experimental stuff. But my main goal has always been photography. But I don't generally follow photographers as artists, to be quite honest. So I'm generally looking at painting, movies, TV shows that are like using creative lighting, creative moods, like thinking, where you can see that the intention that in what they've chosen to do, I guess, like in different sort of TV shows and things like that. Like a few years ago, there was a TV show called True Detective, with, I think the first season had Matthew McConaughey in it or something like that. I can't entirely remember, but the opening sequence on that was just stunning. And just studying that and looking at the color palette and why things were placed where they were and the compositional elements and that sort of thing. That's the kind of thing that inspires me. I love to see something different. I love to see a story. I generally don't follow other pet photographers too much at all. I mean, obviously I've got some friends and stuff like that. We're all friends on Facebook. I see their work and things like that, but it's not something that I'll sit down and study. I prefer, that cinematic sort of style and it
helps you to develop your own look to your images rather than just seeing, that you're a derivative of somebody else. I mean, we're all influenced by somebody, by what we see. You kind of can't help that. Yeah. But it's nice to look outside of the norm. I've said to people before, my background initially was in languages. I was a linguist, so the way I now tend to look at images is often kind of from that perspective, as it's saying something. So unpicking it a little bit like that and thinking,
Yeah.
well, what kind of lighting, what kind of colours do I want in there to create a particular mood, a particular feeling? So I was influenced in my photography by my background as a linguist. So all these things come together and feed together to help make you, an individual artist.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to keep yourself as an individual artist, and by embracing your own personality, the quirks and all of it, and bringing that with you and using that to develop your own style and voice is really important. The world is full of photographers, and if you want to be a leader in that, doing what other people do is probably going to stifle you a little bit. If you're just like, I really like what that person does, so I'm going to learn how to do that style. I mean, that's great if you just want to do client work and you're going to make money and, churn and burn sort of stuff, that can work. But if you've got a creative itch, if you're a creative person like me, you're constantly wanting to push the boundaries, and you can't do that by, looking at something that inspires you and going, I'm just going to learn how to do that. You need to go, what is it about that that inspires me? What have they done here that makes me want to do that as well? And take a little bit of that and then bring something else from somewhere else, or, from your own background or your own stories, your own history, and mash it all together, and hopefully then you've created something it's somewhat original, to the and it's like you said, it's really hard to be original these days. I mean, it's all been done before and it's all out there on the internet for everybody to see, right? So it's just sort of like, try if you really consciously try and just take the inspiration. So yes, I really like that color palette that person used, or I haven't done that pose before with a dog, or whatever, and then just kind of bring those little elements in and try and make it your own. Like with the images that I've been creating over the last couple of years, where I'm documenting animals like growing up from babies to 12 months old. I mean, that's not an original idea. That's something that has been done for forever, and but the way that I present it, and the way that I try and tell that story is different each time. So I'm not even copying myself each time. You know what I mean? Because otherwise I'm not pushing myself. I'm not creating something new. It's like you've got to try and just try and put your own spin on it, put your own personality into it.
So do you think it's then from things like movies that you developed your more sort of storyboarding kind of style, so where you've got multiple images together that suggest a story like that? So is that where that came from?
I think so. I mean, I've never really thought about exactly where that idea came from. I know the first one that I did was the pug catching food, and that was literally taken in a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. Like, it was just high shutter, really fast. And it was, and I got that sequence in a couple of seconds, and I was like, this is amazing. and this is how I'm going to present it. And I did that. And then I sort of, when I'm starting to do other work, I'm like, well, how can this story be told? And sometimes that is beneficial, having those little tiny individual stories that make up a whole story that can really bring the work together. So and funnily enough, I've actually consciously moved away from that with the work that I'm creating this year. I thought I need to give that a break.
Well, there is a risk that you start to get known as the person that does that, so when an image in that style comes up and then people start to copy you, and then, judges see it and they think, they assume it's one of yours or
That's
whatever.
Right.
It's tricky when you come up with something that is fairly distinctive looking like that. It will get copied.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it will. Yeah. It's a shame, but I mean, it's not even a shame. I mean, it's quite the compliment if somebody's trying to do what you're doing, I guess. I would like to encourage people to, like I said, be inspired by what I do or what they like, and try and push it a bit further, because if they push it a bit further, then I might push it a bit further next time, and then we all just get better.
Exactly. I think we all benefit in that way. We keep innovating. It's good for us. So would you say then that creativity is your main motivator? Is that the main thing that gets you going, or is there something else that gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, look, I love business as well. And I love my clients, but they are expecting a product from me. And so I have a product that I deliver, and it's a distinctive style that's mine. But I don't do a lot of the stuff that I do, say, for competitions and stuff for my clients. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I like to have creative freedom, and occasionally I will get clients that will let me do that, which is amazing. But most of the time they just want the product that, they see on my website or on my Instagram. So turning that out, over and over and over again can become quite draining. I mean, anyone who does anything, like they're on a hamster wheel, gets over it eventually. So what I've done here basically is I've tried to create this business that creates enough money for me, and my husband, so that we can, have the life that we want, but in the least amount of time possible, so that the rest of the time I have time to create. Because that's when I'm at my absolute happiest. And one of the great things is that I've been able to intertwine both, because what I do during a client session is I get everything that I need, knowing that this is what the client wants, and so that then they can go on to have their IPS appointment and choose their images and create their wall art. But at the end of that session, if the dog's still got steam or the cat's still got steam, and I see something special in that dog, we just play around, and that's where I get most of my competition images from. So like I said, the pug with catching the treats, the dog looked like a Pixar character, and I was like, I have got to get something that that shows this dog's personality, and that's what we came up with. Of all the ones that are the growing up sessions, they're all clients. Some of them I have let me just go ahead and make the artwork for them. They don't have any input into it, and then they get it, and they're usually, very happy. Most of them, I will just do the stock standard, the book with them growing up and whatever, and then I take the images later on, and I'll do my own thing with it, and then I usually just send them a file or something like that, so that they're, and they're happy with that as well. So it's kind of, it's a great way to sort of integrate it, because I have this constant stream of different animals coming into the studio, and it's the surprising ones the surprises that you get sometimes that make the best images. You can plan out these amazing shoots and get props and, the story that you want to tell or whatever, but it's the ones that come in here, and then they just give you a surprising facial expression, or they do a trick that you've never seen a dog do before or something like that, and then, you come up with a concept around that's inspired or informed by the actual subjects. So it's sort of tried to create this world where I'm still able to actually create at least one day a week.
Yeah, I think it's good for you, because when you have got that sort of creativity at heart, if you don't, you can soon start to fall out of love with it when you're just going through the motions of the mechanics of it. So especially if you can connect it with an actual client session and do it on the end, it's a bit like I might do with the product sometimes, is you take the shots that they want, and then you take 2 or 3 extra ones that are a bit quirky. They might see that and think, oh, actually, I'll have a copy of that.
Yeah.
But if they don't, well, at least you've got something you can play with.
That's exactly right. You've scratched that itch, to create something a bit different as well. And I think it's really important, if you're creatively minded, to really nurture that, because that then gives. I know for me, if I don't have a chance to actually sit down and work on my own personal projects, on a regular basis, it sucks the life out of me, and therefore I don't take the energy into my actual professional business and the clients that I deal with on a daily basis. I don't take the good energy with me. So you kind of need to nurture both. which is one of the reasons why I do competition, because once I've created all this stuff, it's like, well, what am I going to do with it now? Get it out as much as,
Might as well win another award with it, yeah.
Just put it out there, Otherwise nobody sees it, it's sort of, so I initially started off doing competition to push myself, and that's still a really good main reason why I do it, because it also gives you a reason to create. But I actually initially started doing it to help my business grow and get traction, and to also just get into a community of people in the photography industry, because I wasn't part of that previously. So that was a really great way of getting recognition for the business, and gaining client trust and things like that.
So you found it has actually helped directly with your clients then,
absolutely,
having the awards?
Absolutely. So just about every animal that I've had that's in any of my images, especially in the beginning, were all clients. And there were ones that were informed by a look or something that the dog had given me during the session. So taking that, being successful with it is obviously a key thing here, because people love to attach themselves to success, and that, if your dog or your kid is a subject in an award-winning photograph, that's something that it makes them very proud and excited. And, like I said, I always give them a copy of it and things like that. So then they're talking to people, and then, if you've got that success and you get into the paper and it's there, their dog's in the paper, I send them the links to all of the stories online and things like, they talk to everybody about it. And now people have got to know me as that person as well, that yes, I am that award-winning photographer, and they come to me for that. And it's, I know a lot of photographers say that it doesn't actually help them with their business, but I completely disagree with that. I think that it is not only helped my confidence, but it's helped my clients have confidence in me, and therefore they talk about me. And, if they're talking about you, it's awesome.
Well, word of mouth is invaluable, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can get word of mouth going, then that's the best thing.
Absolutely.
That's the best way of your business being promoted. And and if you haven't got to start it, if they're doing it off their own back, they're excited, so they want to share it. That's absolutely ideal for you.
It is. And it's really not that hard to get your dog images into local papers, and, to get recognition for stuff like that. Everybody wants to look at dog images, so why not use it, leverage it, and So if I keep doing that, and then their clients keep coming in, then they keep paying me for that. I can keep creating, and it's just a nice little circle.
It feeds in nicely. Yeah. So what about then with the business side of it? You kind of hinted at earlier that you don't mind that, because some photographers, when they go into the business side of things, some feel a bit lost, and some just feel downright bored because they've got to deal with numbers and they've got structures and all these kind of things that they don't necessarily want to have to fit into. So what's your relationship like with business, and do you have to bring any kind of creativity into it to make it bearable for you?
I think, yes, I do have to bring creativity to it. And I do that through my marketing. And I've always, this isn't my first business. I had the dog grooming business was my first business, and I did that quite successfully for about 7 years. And then I had a Subway franchise as well. So I've sort of been in business most of my adult life, and this is just the next step for me. I was a bit lost in the beginning. I've never had a photography business, and they certainly don't teach you about that at art school, that's for sure. So yes, it was daunting, but I knew enough to ask for help. And I think that's a big thing. One of the first things that I did as soon as I could afford it was I employed the services of Mark Rosetto, who I noticed is on the podcast recently.
Yes,
so, he was with me right at the beginning, and we spent a lot of time together. Obviously, like I said, I had an idea of what I was doing, but I needed actual real direction from somebody who had lived and breathed it, and Mark helped me with that. And So that was probably the best thing that I like. The best knowledge that I had was that I knew I needed to ask for help, and I think that's sometimes, sometimes it takes people a long time to ask for help, and they struggle through it for years before they go, oh God, there's actually somebody out there who could help me with this. Instead of spending $5,000 on a camera, I spent $5,000 on getting Mark to help me. So I think that sort of helped a lot in the beginning. But when I had the dog grooming business, one of the things that I found there was how to get creative with marketing. So we're talking about a time with no social media or anything like that. So it was just being at every event you possibly can be at, anything that's free, because you also don't have a whole lot of money. You can't be paying thousands of dollars. It's a dog grooming business. It's it's got a limit on how much money you can make, so there's a limit on how much money you can spend. And just one of the things that I did was just get creative with things, and that's what I did when I opened up Frog Dog Studios. I just that was probably my strong point, is figuring out my branding and my messaging, and then figuring out then getting creative with my marketing. And I've told this story before when I've done talks, but one of the best things I ever did is I sat here one day and I was like, it's like 2 months into this, and I've had a handful of clients, but definitely not enough. What am I going to do? So obviously here in Victoria, Australian rules football is really, really popular. I went to my friends, I borrowed their football jumpers, I put them on my dogs at home, I took photos of them, I photoshopped them into football grounds, and I sent them to the biggest newspaper here in Victoria, and they rang me within 15 minutes. And that Saturday, I was in half page on the second page, and then a full spread in the middle of the paper of my artwork, and I just haven't looked back since, really. So it's... it was just an idea off the cuff at the end of the day. It cost me no money, and just my time, and that launched everything for me from there.
You never really know what's going to work. I mean, sometimes people can suggest things that have worked for them, but they don't work for you for whatever reason, and so on. It can be quite difficult finding that combination of things, or just finding something that kicks something off. I mean, presumably you've had marketing, well, let's not call them failures, but sort of things you've tried that haven't gone as well as you might have hoped.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn, I find with things that haven't worked, is then you need to figure out why. Don't just throw it aside. You need to figure out why. So initially, in that first year of business, I signed up to do what we call the Dog Lovers Show here. So there's about 40,000 people come through the exhibition buildings on a weekend over 3 days. It's, it costs you quite a lot of money to be there. But I found the money and I did it. And it didn't actually get me clients that first time like I thought it would, right? So, but it was my first expo. I didn't know what I was doing that well. I'm quite an introverted person around people I don't know, so I'm not the ideal person to be talking to people, and I didn't have the confidence. But I've done that now every single year since then. So we've done it for 6 years, 7 years in a row, aside from the years of COVID that it didn't happen. And now I know exactly what I'm doing, why it didn't work the first time, why it was a little bit better the second time, third time, and it just got better and better. And now that is the only marketing I do every single year, because it fills my calendar for the entire year. So sometimes I think that a little bit of perseverance and analysis and critical thinking about why something isn't working and trying again is definitely needed to make these things work.
I was going to say, some people might think, well, especially if it's a more expensive form of marketing, if I've tried it and I haven't got results, move on. I'll do something else. Yeah. But you've found that actually, strategically you'd worked out that this was something that would work in the longer term. It was something that, for various reasons would need to be done more than once.
Well, absolutely.
That can be a difficult decision to make sometimes.
It can be. And I mean, I didn't have the money for it, especially the first few years, so I would put it on the credit card and hope and pray that I would make enough money back to pay for it as I was going. Now I don't need to do that, which is great. I have the money set aside for that every year and whatnot. But it I wouldn't be able to do that if I hadn't have just persevered. So the reason why I persevere and kept making that decision to go back is because I'm looking at this show that is bringing in millions of dollars over 3 days, and the big companies are all there, and they're there every single year. And then there's the same sort of medium and small companies that are there every single year. And yes, you do see the ones that come and go. They'll do it 1 year, throw their hands up, never come back, all that sort of stuff. But it's the people who are constantly showing up and tweaking things, and people come looking for my stand now because they know that I'm going to have a rip roaring special on, and they saw us and talked to us the year before and the year before that, and they want to know about, how you're doing and all that sort of stuff, and they're finally ready to book in. And it's just consistency, I think, with things like that. And I think that's like with any marketing, really. Consistency is key. I mean, you can't sort of just show up once, throw your hands up and move on. It's
would you say relationships an important aspect of it for your type of photography as well? So relationship with clients or forming those relationships?
I guess so. I mean, it's not something that I concentrate on a lot, but I do make friends with a lot of my clients, like, acquaintances, friends, like people that when I do go to the Dog Lovers Show, they come and find me, say, hi, how you going? Tell me all about how the dog's doing, that sort of thing. And while they're here in the studio, I really do try to make them feel comfortable, obviously, both the dog and the people, and it's all a very friendly and relaxed experience. So there are those relationships definitely that are worthwhile nurturing, and even and nurturing them afterwards. I mean, I know we've all got email lists and things like that, but just, following your clients on Instagram, and then when their dog pops up and it's their birthday, giving it a happy birthday, everybody else reads the comments, sees that you've done that, and I think if it comes from a place of genuine, love or whatever you want to call it, it's important, sort of, like I said, it's not something I think about too much. I just do it.
Yeah, well, if it's coming naturally, then that's great, really. Yeah. Because I mean, for so many people, trying to get into that rhythm of finding the way that their business is going to work can be a real struggle. Can be a bit of a fight. They'll try one thing, they'll try something else, and they'll think, "Do I persevere with it? Do I not?" And people can be very uncertain in that time and spend a lot of money and not feel like they're getting very far. Do I need to, if I'm going to be a pet photographer, yes, I need treats for the animals, but do I need treats for the owners, to keep them happy and all that kind of thing? There's a lot that you can potentially disappear off down a rabbit hole and get obsessed with and, lose sight of the bigger picture.
You can. And I see this quite a lot within Facebook business groups and things like that. Should I do this? Should I do that? I'm making these welcome packs, and I'm making these packs to put in when I give them their order and that sort of thing. And that's not where your focus should be, in my opinion. I think what you should be doing is focusing on the experience that you're giving that client when they actually do come to see you. It's always who doesn't like a little trinket? Obviously, yes, we all do, but most of the time those little trinkets end up in the bin. Even fridge magnets these days, people don't use them. We've got everything that we need on our phone. I haven't had a business card for 7 years, because if somebody asks me for my business card, I tell them to open up Instagram, and there I am right there. That's how you can get hold of me. A business card goes into a pocket or wallet or in the bin, and nobody, uses it again. And it's the same with all those sort of little, adding those little things to orders and that. Yes, they're nice, but that's not why your clients are going to come back. They're going to come back because they remember how you made them feel. and how, like in my case, how I made their animal feel as well, which makes the owner feel amazing. So concentrate more on those things, and those things are free.
You can't substitute the sort of the genuineness and those sorts of things which you can do for free with the kind of bought extras. That doesn't really work. You know, if it hasn't been an enjoyable session, they're not suddenly going to love you because you've given them a mug with a picture on it or something.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. And I mean, we deal with animals here. We can't control how the animal's going to behave, and if they're going to be frightened, or if it might not always be a positive experience. I mean, 99% of the time it's a wonderful experience, but occasionally you'll just get a dog in here who you cannot settle it. It's just not going to work. But what you like to how you've treated that client along that whole way and treated that dog is what they're going to remember you for. And although you didn't get any images to actually sell to the client, they've paid their session fee, you've done your best, you've treated the client with respect and love the whole way through, you've loved on the dog and done everything you possibly can to get this, like, not forcing this dog to do something, but to help this dog get over its fear. And that's what your clients remember. You know, they don't go away and go, oh, she didn't know what she was doing. You know, she doesn't know how to do this. They go away going, well, I don't know whether there was anything else that person could have done, and I'm going to tell my friends that, you know. So it's you can, you know, if you treat people correctly, then you can turn any negative into a positive.
Yeah, and I can imagine as well that if you're the sort of person that likes to fuss around an awful lot with your lighting and you're not giving the attention to your subject, it's not going to go so well. You've got to kind of get the technical elements. You've got to just have them so that they're automatic and you're not really thinking about it. So you can really be fully present with your client, with their pet.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what we've created here. We've got a go-to lighting setup. They have a choice of two backgrounds. You can go for the light background or the dark background, and it's basically a grey or a bone colour. So I've got two different lighting setups for the different colour backgrounds, and that's it. And I don't touch the lights. The settings are all the same. And that's the way it stays for a client session. Now, if I'm actually going to then start doing something that I'm thinking for awards or, you know, creativity or, you know, creating something else, I'll definitely be fluffing around with lights. But for everyday, you know, client work, it's a routine. It's you know, this is how it needs to be done because this is the way it works the best.
Yeah, and people also get used to seeing it, and that's kind of almost your signature look overall. The way you light it, the way you retouch it, that's consistent. Your product.
It's consistency, yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say then if someone was thinking about starting out as a pet photographer? What would you say are the sort of essential qualities, essential things that they would need?
Well, I think obviously, like we talked about before, having some sort of idea on how to work with animals is definitely your first port of call. I mean, you can learn how to use your camera and your lighting and that sort of stuff relatively easily, but if you cannot get a rapport with an animal, then you're never going to. I don't think that you're going to be successful in pet photography. I mean, there are a lot of photographers out there who are turning to pet photography at the moment because it's one of the genres that haven't been hit as hard as others with the cost of living crisis and things like that. And what I mean by that is that my clients don't have children, they have dogs. So they've got a disposable income. So I know a lot of photographers are doing that, but it's sort of like if you've got no idea how to, don't expect the owner to know what to do. They don't. So many times I see the owners come in here and they think they know their dogs, but they don't. They misinterpret the body language. They see a dog panting and wagging its tail as a happy dog. It's not necessarily a happy dog. It could be a really anxious dog. You know, and they don't always know the other sort of small things to look out for. And I think if you're going to work with animals as a professional, you need to be able to do that because it's up to you to call it quits if the dog's in any kind of distress or danger or anything like that, or any animal, for not just dogs. And I have had clients in here that want to keep pushing it when their dog's not cooperating and things like that. And I've had to be firm and say, no, we've got enough. We've got everything we need to actually work with, or sorry, we couldn't get it today, but I'm not going to keep pushing this because I can see that this is not working and it's not safe to go on any further. So you, like I said, as a professional working with animals, you need to be able to recognize these things. So get yourself experience doing that. There's plenty of different ways to do it. Like I said, volunteer at your shelter, go do a course, read some books. There's YouTube channels. Just get out there and be amongst it. Go to your dog park and start studying dog behaviour and things like that. And that will help. The next thing, I guess, then is to, if you want to run a business, get some business training. I mean, even if you've got the most beautiful ability with your camera and able to capture a dog's personality and essence and things like that. If you don't know how to run a business, then you're not going to be doing it for very long. So don't buy the new camera. Don't buy the new lens. If you've got a camera and a lens, that's all you need. Go and spend the money on a business coach. It is worth every cent. And I mean, if you can do one-on-one, if you can afford one-on-one, I know there's a lot of memberships and stuff out there that are a lot more affordable. I mean, if that's all you can afford, then that's what you should do. But if you can afford to spend it for one-on-one, you're going to get there a lot faster. So just get amongst that sort of thing. And then just remember that it's supposed to be fun. Everything that we do here, we're hanging out with animals, so it's just supposed to be fun. So have fun with it, And,
I think that's an important point, really. Not just to see it as, oh look, here's a genre of photography that's still making money, so I'll go into that because I want to make a little bit more money, and seeing it as a cash cow to be milk dry sort of thing. But actually, really thinking about the genre: is it something you're going to enjoy? Is it something that you can really do naturally like that? Because it's like with when you're taking pictures of people with slight differences in the way that someone holds themselves just can make a huge difference in the look of an image. And it's the same with animals. It's not just the big body expressions, it's the smaller ones as well, which can make the difference between them looking happy or sort of rather fed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I shoot here on high speed burst mode, and I've got the pro photos to make sure that I don't miss any frames, and that's the reason why I do it, because literally I can do a set of 5 shots up one after the other, and the slightest movement in their eye or nose or something can make them look like they're in a completely different mood. So it is, but those nuances are important. I think in any kind of photography, really, but definitely, I know for pet photography, it's I can show somebody 2 different images that look almost the same, but they give 2 completely different emotions or feelings. So
when you're buying kit as well, you're also thinking very much about what is going to serve the purpose, rather than just what's the latest version, what's the snazziest version. I mean, yes, okay, you could say something like a pro photo is not the cheapest light, but there's a reason for getting something like that, because you don't want to be pressing it, waiting 4 seconds for the light to recharge before you can take another shot. Your style of photography kind of requires that it work a bit quicker.
Absolutely. And people will say, like, you do hear people say things like, it's not about the gear and all that sort of stuff all the time. And to a certain degree, I can attest to that. So I started out here with a Nikon D800, and I had a 35mm Nikon lens, but not the good one, the one that cost under $300. That's all I had. And I had a 50mm lens, but I never used that in the studio. I've got a small space. I needed something wider. But my lights were the Elinchrom, they the RX4 monoblocks. They're like $1,500 for 3 of them. They're relatively cheap. I'd been using them since I was at uni, and I used those for the first 4 years of my career. And it's exactly what you said it was. It's click the button, wait, And you're missing so many moments in between that. And, you know, we tried to do high speed sync and all that sort of stuff. But you know what? I made money. I won awards using that equipment. But when I was able to buy the Pro Photos and the new Sony gear, the new Sony equipment with it, you know, it's just obviously technology. My camera was about 12 years old by the time I upgraded. So the technology has obviously advanced a lot. And it was like having this amazing new tool in my kit, you know, like I could create things that I could never create using the other equipment. So yes, you can do just fine with the equipment that you've got. But once you get to the point where you can actually afford the good stuff, there's a reason I chose the Pro Photos and not Godox, because the Godox can't keep up with the Pro Photos. They just can't shoot fast enough to freeze the motion of a moving dog. The Pro Photos are the only ones I've ever found that can do that. So if, you know, I don't have to I can't shoot in a black studio because I need to be able to focus and my dogs are always moving. So it's not like I can do, like you can sort of black out the studio to freeze the action. I have to have ambient light in here. So you need, the D2s are the only ones that I found that can actually overpower that ambient light and still freeze that motion really easily. You know, that combined with the Sony A7 R4 or whatever it is that I'm using, has just been a godsend. It's been, it's an amazing, together they work together so well, and I've seen my work and consistency go from here to here, and it's also saved me so much time in the post processing. You know, it's because you know you've got consistency of light, color, and quality of light and things like that. Whereas you know you're using the Electron mono blocks there. I mean, they're cheap for a reason. It's, you know, Electron do have really good equipment, but I didn't have their really good equipment. I had their bare bones basic equipment. So it's, you know, it was constant. Every flash was a different color. And, you know, it's like you said, it's you got to wait for, you know, 4 seconds for it to recharge and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, equipment can be important, I guess, is the short answer to that.
Yeah, but it's also something you can work towards. Sometimes people can fall into that trap of thinking, well, what is my optimal set of kit? And I want to start with that. And you think, well, that might be nice, but you know, sometimes you need to work towards these things. When I started out, I had a couple of speed lights and people were saying, oh, you can't really do product photography with speed lights. And I did manage to put them through sort of soft boxes and so on. Yeah. But because my studio is very small and everything's all in fairly close and that anyway, I could make it work. It was okay.
Yeah. You learn to manage with what you've got.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to work like that now. And the lights I've got are more powerful and so on and so forth. But, you know, you learn as well. But I think it's good for your creativity because you become a problem solver. If you haven't got everything on your served on a plate to you as easy as it could possibly be. Yeah, absolutely. You have to learn.
I totally agree. And I mean, the problem solving that we did in those first few years with, you know, having to manage with what we had, it was worth it though, because like I said, instead of spending the money on new camera and equipment and stuff like that, I spent it on getting somebody to help me grow this business, which is the long-term plan, right? That's the long game. It's because now I can buy whatever equipment I want. So if I had have bought the camera instead of got the business coaching, then I would have a camera, but it would not be making any money.
Yeah. So all the kit and no business. Yeah. You don't want it that way around, do you? No.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we've all got to make a living out of these things. If you discovered another genre that you could do that was potentially more lucrative, say it was people or something like that, would you switch?
No. Never. No, I love what I do. I really do. You know, I've got no interest in photographing people whatsoever. I'm not. It definitely doesn't suit my personality style. The only thing that I've actually been looking at lately is starting to learn a little bit more about wildlife photography, just because I'm looking for a bit more of a challenge. But mostly to just scratch an itch really at this point. It's I'm not interested really in moving away from animals at all. So
Yes, it comes across as being really a passion for you. It's
Yeah.
something that you really connect with. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Sometimes with people, you dangle a bit more money in front of them, and they'll just run after that carrot.
Oh, it would have to be a significant amount of money, to be quite honest with you. It's it's yeah, I love what I do. I mean, who doesn't want to hang out with animals all day? Dogs are the best.
Do you still have goals then for your business? Are there still perhaps awards you want to win, or are there still stages you want to get your business to? Are you happy with how things are for now and ticking along?
There are always goals, Joe. Otherwise, what's the point in getting up in the morning? I have many, many goals. Most of it, like, I'm pretty happy with where the business is at the moment. It's consistent. I know how much money's going to come in every year. It's just maintaining that at the moment. My other goals at the moment is I'm starting to do a lot more mentoring and speaking workshops, that sort of thing. So I'm working on a new website at the moment for that side of things to help teach other people how to do studio pet photography. I see that there's a lot of education around pet photography out there, but most of it is out there in natural light conditions.
Yeah.
Outdoor photography. I don't do any of that. I don't like the great outdoors that much. So I keep everything inside my studio. And I would really like to pass on a lot of the knowledge that I've got now in how to do that and really sort of mentor people. So I'm putting stuff together for that at the moment. That's a bit of a medium-term goal at the moment. There's always competitions I want to win that I haven't quite been able to nab yet. So we just keep trying. That sort of thing. Yeah. And I want to do, I've been traveling a bit, obviously, around the world doing some different workshops and speaking engagements and things like that. My goal this year is to get on the WPPI speakers list. So if anyone wants to put in a good word for me, that'd be wonderful. But that's a goal. That's a goal at the moment that I'm working towards. And we're just keep plodding along and making art and being happy.
Great. Well, that is the main thing, yeah. So if people want to keep up with what you're doing and see these things develop, where's the best place to go?
So I have my business website, which is just frogdogstudios.com.au. I've got my personal creative website, which is belindarichards.com. You can find me on all the normal social channels, either at Belinda Richards Artist or at Frog Dog Studios. I think I'm on all of the platforms. I got the handle for all of them. So, it's pretty easy to find me. And you're always welcome to get in touch too if you've got any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, it's been great having you on the podcast. It's been really interesting learning more about your story and encourage people to go and take a look at the artwork.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. It's been an actual real pleasure to be here.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much for being on the podcast, and thank you everybody for listening. Get connected, trained, supported and qualified with the Society of Photographers, sponsors of the Focus Professional podcast.